Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I ask my stupid questions to some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. My guest this week worked as an FBI special agent and sniper for more than 2 decades. He's a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy and later worked at the Air Force Office of Special Investigations prior to joining the FBI. Throughout his career, he participated in numerous high-risk tactical missions with the FBI's SWAT team based out of the Oklahoma City field office. Recently, he's written a book about those experiences, Send Me, Chronicles of an FBI Sniper. Today, we're chatting with Jeremy Rebmann. Jeremy, thank you for joining me.
Jake, thanks for having me.
Of course, man. I'm very excited about this. We were just talking before we got started. I very much only choose people I'm interested to talk to. So stumbling upon you, I can't even truthfully remember how I did it, but I was like, this is a person that has a story to tell that I'm interested to hear from. So thank you for indulging me in that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So over 2 decades working with the FBI. Before that, working in special investigations with the Air Force, law enforcement's kind of this through line, catching the bad guys. Why? What's the origin story of how you get into all of it?
Well, I wanted to be a fighter pilot my whole life. Since I was really little, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So I put all my effort into getting into the Air Force Academy and trying to get into pilot training, and those doors closed over and over and over again. But I went into the Air Force anyway, and ended up getting into OSI, the Office of Special Investigations, which is a lot like the FBI of the Air Force. And I loved it. I was like, man, I think I probably should have been trying to do this all along. And I did that for a few years and worked a joint case with the FBI. And they sang their siren song about their job. And I was like, well, I guess I'll throw in my paper for the FBI, and ended up doing that for 23 more years.
So what was it? It's funny we share that. Despite the fact that I never made a serious attempt to be a fighter pilot, I am obsessed with. I've had Top Gun pilot on before. I'm obsessed with the movie Top Gun specifically, and the whole thing. What captured your attention from an early age about being a fighter pilot?
Man, I don't know. I think honestly, I think like Buck Rogers in Star Wars and all that, like guys ripping through space, it just seemed like such an adventure. And then I later in childhood realized like there's no one flying spaceships around. Being because I wanted to be an astronaut at first, I thought, and then I found out that astronauts mostly ride the capsule. And so I was like, what would be like that where I could soar through the air and do what I want? So that was being a pilot.
Mm-hmm. And little did you know, this many years later, the Space Force would exist, and you could have maybe been exactly. Talk to me about that decision, or, that time period where you realized that the fighter pilot thing wasn't going to happen and you had to make another choice with your life.
It was a lot. Man, there's so many doors that shut. Looking back on it, I applied for the Air Force Academy, and I initially got accepted in high school. And then they sent me a no thank you letter because one of my eyes tested 2025. I mean, just barely not 2020. And they have so many candidates. They're like, meh, 2025, forget you. So they pulled my acceptance letter, and I ended up fighting the decision and got my eyes retested and got into the Air Force Academy, got there, and they started pulling pilot slots because of the big Clinton drawdown. And they pulled like 80 something percent. Almost my whole class lost their pilot slots.
What year would this have been?
93, 94 were the two classes that I was 94. And I think we had 850 pilot slots, and they pulled like 600 of them.
Oh my.
Yeah. So they told 600 of us, you lost your guaranteed pilot slot, find something else. And so I went into aircraft sortie generation, which is like fixing jets, loading bombs, making sure they take off on time. And then I reapplied for pilot training while I was an officer in the Air Force, and I failed this blood work test that I later got resolved. But I mean, I just got door shut, door shut, door shut. And then I was living in a tent on the edge of a runway in the desert on the edge of Iraq. We were flying no-fly zone over Iraq. I was a maintenance officer fixing these tankers. And I kind of had a breakdown where I was like, man, I've spent my whole life trying to be a pilot and it's not working. Mm-hmm. And I'm a Christian. And I prayed about it and I called my wife and I was like, I am literally I'm at the end of trying to do this. And it seems like the moment that I let go, I just started like the guy I met when I got home was an OSI special agent. We became fast friends. There was this huge flood in North Dakota. His house got destroyed. So he ended up living with me for a month. And I got to learn all about OSI. I joined OSI. And then as I got into OSI, I learned about what the Bureau really is, which was really excited me. And then I started making friends with FBI agents. And then I just thought, man, I would love to be a fighter pilot, but all these doors are opening for being an agent. So I just followed them.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy how that works. You know, I'm a Christian as well. And it seems like the more we resist the plan, the more the doors shut. And when we just let go, suddenly things start opening up and you find the thing you were supposed to be doing all along.
Yeah.
So you finally find yourself working in OSI. And so talk to me about those initial kind of experiences and those investigations, the things that kind of sunk their hooks in you in terms of this might be the thing for you.
Oh man, that's a good question. It was a culture shock because I went from working the flight line. It was very methodical, loading bombs and bullets, making sure there's jet fuel, making sure the plane runs, it produces thrust. There was checklists and it was pretty easy to know whether you were doing your job right or not. And then when I first got into OSI, it was just chaos. You get a call in the middle of the night and it could be a robbery, it could be a sexual assault, it could be a suicide. And it sounds cliche that, like chasing the rush of it, but it wasn't even the rush of it. It was like the mystery of what happens next. Mm-hmm. Like, what kind of phone call am I going to get? And then I'm working a crime scene that I'd never dreamt of before. And I got to be part of the resolution. I think that really became addictive, that I could show up where there was chaos and carnage and maybe bring a little bit of healing and restructuring to that. Mm-hmm. I love fixing things.
Yeah.
And I really think like I got to fix sometimes people's worst days, or at least contribute to fixing it. Mm-hmm. And fell in love with that. I think even more so than my love of aviation.
So for the sake of reference, this OSI office, you are solving basically federal level crime that pertain to people inside of the Air Force, or how does it, who right. is your target demographic for, who's calling you?
Right. That's a great question. We investigated anything that applied to the Air Force, and then we had the authority to arrest people that were in the Air Force. So like pick an easy one, like drugs. If there was a drug dealer dealing off base, we would investigate that, and then we would cooperate with the local authorities to maybe arrest that person. But so in particular, I was a captain, but I never wore the captain's rank. Once I got into OSI, I wore a suit and tie every day, carried a badge and gun, and no one knew my rank. My partner was a staff sergeant, and the guy across the hall from me was a GS-12. My boss was a lieutenant colonel. No one knew. We were just guys in black. But
so you're doing this not only domestically, but also internationally? Like there's OSI everywhere, I would assume?
There is, yeah. So we did overseas deployments, and then the mission changes. Stateside, we were very much cops and counterintelligence agents. So we were trying to stop people from spying or stealing our technology or committing crimes against Air Force members. But then overseas, specifically, I was assigned to Air Force Special Operations Command. We were really highly trained interviewers for criminal investigations. We went overseas, we were doing field interviews for detainees.
Oh, okay.
So our job was, so some of the special operators that we would run around with, they would capture people, and then we would actually do the field interview techniques to elicit information. And a lot of it is just like building rapport, figuring out what makes someone tick, and then figuring out like, what's the lever that I need to pull for you to tell me the thing I need to know. And we're really successful at that. So overseas, I mean, we had guns, but we really didn't investigate crimes unless like someone showed up dead. We kind of switched gears when we were overseas.
So as someone that was involved in those kind of interviews, there's all this talk, and I'm sure you have an opinion of it in terms of this, like, I think the nice way they refer to it is advanced interrogation techniques.
Yeah.
And how effective or ineffective rather they may be. And I've heard specifically about how FBI and some other agencies would come into these rooms and seeing some of these quote unquote advanced interrogation or torture techniques and being like, you're doing it all wrong. This is not how we get quality information from these people. What was your experience with that, if at all? And what's your opinion of that?
Yeah. I never saw the advanced techniques used on anybody in any of my experiences, but I'm confident that you can torture a lie out of someone. I'm sure. I mean, I think you get, the whole point is to get good intelligence. Where's the roadside bomb? Who is in charge of your cell? Those sort of things. Like, I don't need someone to lie to me because they feel pressured or they just want to get out from under the thumb. But if it turns out that like this guy really wants a prayer rug or he wants a kosher meal, and I can promise that to him. Like, I can promise that I'll make your life better and there's going to be quid pro quo, but I care about who you are and I respect your beliefs and your religion, and we'll make some sort of deal. But man, I'm a strong believer that torture is it not only is it immoral, but it's counterproductive if your goal is to find the truth. All I care about is the truth.
Yeah. So it seems to be a through line when I hear people talking about that, of like, everyone thinks, oh man, just get the whatever torture device out and you'll have all the information you want. And it seems like people that are actually in the know go, actually, no, it's flawed logic.
Yeah. And it's in every TV show. They're electrocuting someone or they shoot them in the leg or something like that would, just send them into shock.
Yeah, exactly. That's not super high quality stuff. And so how long did you do that inside the Air Force?
I did OSI for about 3 years.
Okay. And so when your billet comes up in the Air Force, how long then have you been when you're finally going to be done with that and go, quote unquote civilian, I guess? I don't know if they would consider you a civilian in the FBI, but. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. So I had 4 years at the Air Force Academy, about 3 years launching jets, doing sortie generation, and about another 3 years as an OSI special agent. So about 6 years active duty, about 10 years, including the Air Force Academy. So I am at this point 27? No, 20. To think about it, 29, something like that.
Okay.
And that's when I joined the bureau, and was like a young kid. Like the average new like rookie FBI special agent is 31.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I was the youngest guy in my class.
What's the background of those people primarily? Prior law enforcement or military or what?
Yeah, I thought it would be like a whole room full of cops, at least my class. There was maybe 50 people in my new agent class. And my roommate was an attorney, like a gifted attorney. The guy that sat in front of me was actually like a street cop. I think there were maybe 3 of us that were street cops, maybe 2 of us that were detectives, probably 7 or 8 military. And then we had there's a biochemist that sat in the row in front of me, a banker, a history teacher who I'm still in touch with. Wow. Has his own podcast now. He's a cyber expert.
Huh.
a lot, like just this huge variety. But what it seemed like it was the Bureau wanted people who are already really successful in some other job and then steal them, which I think is why the average age is 31. Because they're looking for someone who is already like an expert biochemist or an expert lawyer or a special operations soldier. Yeah. And they say, hey, we're going to steal you and move you over here and use you for our mission. And you spend your last 20 years here where we have those resources at our fingertips now.
So in that, what does that process look like in terms of like, obviously there's probably 1 million people or more in the country that would love to work for the FBI. It must be incredibly selective, incredibly competitive. What does that training pipeline and hiring process look like?
They told me up front, don't be surprised if it takes 2 years to get hired.
Wow.
And they hired me in under a year, and that was a record. I was tickled. Well, I remember I had like a flow chart I had on magnets on my fridge that my wife and I would check, and it would be like, there was a polygraph and there was a fitness test and there was a medical doctor exam and a formal interview and the background check, and just kind of going through the process. So I might have been 9 months for me. I know I had classmates that took 2 years. Wow. And then when all that is finally done, you get an acceptance letter to go to Quantico, new agents training in Virginia. And that's it's about a 4.5, 5 month process while you're there. And what I liked about Quantico a lot is that day one, they swear you in, and they let you know for every seat that's taken here, there were 10,000 applicants.
Wow.
So we don't have to have you. If you really screw up while you're here, we have thousands of people that were almost as qualified or maybe fully qualified that you could just slip into that chair. So don't think you have any privilege. But then at the same time, they said, if you have any struggle while you're here, if you have the desire to be here, we've already chosen you. Mm-hmm. So if you fail your law exam and you're willing to get like special remedial training, or you fail a fitness exam, if you care about it, we'll help you get through it. As opposed to like, some military schools they can't wait to kick people out. Yeah. So I like that the Bureau was like, we picked you and we really hope you make it. If you choose not to put forth the effort, we're happy to let you go. But if you're willing to try, we'll help you succeed here.
What was the environment like in terms of cooperation or competitiveness inside the class?
Well, that's a great question. My wife and I watched the TV show Quantico.
Okay.
It's fiction, As
they all are, right?
Yeah. I have a hard time watching that stuff. But in that show, they were always competing. Like, you guys have to do this and you guys do that. And the winning team gets to stay and the losing team gets kicked out. And there was none of that. It was very much collaborative, physical fitness events or timed exams or something like that were individual effort. But we had Hogan's Alley, which is this whole fake town with a bank that gets robbed every Wednesday at noon with real role players, and there's cars and sim guns. There's a movie theater that functions. There's a pool hall that really is a pool hall, and all full with actors. And so when you're doing those things, it's a very collaborative, and I wouldn't doubt it if they were grading us on being collaborative, not being a lone wolf, having somebody back you up, you back someone else up, taking care of each other. So it was a very much a teamwork is encouraged environment while I was there.
So when you look back at that period of time and the training you went through initially, what are some of the lessons you feel like you took away from that?
From my experience at Quantico?
Yeah, from your initial training, like in terms of being onboarded into the FBI, what are some of the lessons they instilled into you that had some staying power?
I think one of them was we do like practice investigations while we're there, obviously. So then you do the paperwork, make sure you're doing the paperwork right, that you're thinking like an investigator, that you can manage a crime scene. But it was the surprises that they would throw in. We did this big case where they tried to throw everything in. So it was a case where the guy was a terrorist, but he was robbing banks to finance it. And then he was laundering the money to also finance it. And then, it's built into it. So now you've worked a terrorism case that's also a bank robbery, that's also an embezzlement case. And so but to not realize at the outset of the case that like this guy is a terrorist, and to always think like, I don't know where this case may take me. And I don't even know if the accused is innocent or guilty. I think I left there with I will approach every case with an open mind that I probably know who the victim is, and I have an obligation to love and care for and protect the victim, but I don't always know who's guilty. And my assumptions about who's guilty is only going to hurt. So I walked into cases with just an open mind. You get a piece of evidence that's damning, okay, put it on the shelf, good. Get a little piece of evidence that shows maybe this guy's got a good alibi. All right, let's put that on the shelf. I don't want to just catch a bad guy. I want to catch the bad guy. I don't care how many people I arrest. I just want to make sure I arrest the right people. And I felt like they taught that well there. It was very, there was never any pressure in the FBI to like arrest a certain amount of people or seize a certain amount of drugs. It was that we were always doing things ethically, that the focus was on doing the right thing. And that lights me up. I was like this, I want to stay in this job forever.
There seems to be, and obviously the world is ripe with conspiracy and finger pointing and whatnot, but there seems to be this like undertone that like some of these 3-letter federal agencies have like this, I don't know what you'd call it, underlying control of things, and they're twisting the screws on the back end and forcing it. What was your experience working inside the agency in terms of powers above you dictating what you were supposed to see and do and find and not find?
Man, I have so many thoughts about that all at once. One of them is the way the Bureau is organized is there's 56 field offices with 56 special agents in charge. So SACs are a lot like a wing commander when I was in the Air Force. They're like a battalion commander in the Army. They have a lot of executive control. And my experience, and I have friends, I have old teammates that became SACs. They didn't really take a lot of orders from DC. It was more like your direction was, we'd like to see, an emphasis on embezzlements because it's hurting the banking industry or whatever the thing may be. But I never felt any influence. And the Bureau's rank structure is so narrow. So like in the military, you got privates all the way up through senior NCOs and then young lieutenants all the way up through generals. You've got like 20 ranks the Bureau is literally, as far as the special agent side, it's special agent, supervisor, assistant special agent in charge, deputy director, director. That's it.
Oh, wow.
So
very flat.
It's very flat. So like I knew my supervisor personally, and I knew my ASAC personally, and I would run into the SAC and talk to the SAC on, several times a year. And that dude reported to the deputy director who reported to the director. So it didn't feel like there was a lot of, bureaucratic noise because the rank structure was so flat. And like I knew these guys. So it wasn't like someone couldn't manage a conspiracy in the FBI because everyone had so much authority to call out a conspiracy.
Okay.
We investigate corrupt public officials. So a lot of us have the mindset for like, what if that's wrong? What if that violates the Constitution? And Quantico, they really hammered that into us. They're like, why can't you do this? Because the Fourth Amendment, that's why you can't do this. Forget what the law says. The Constitution says this. And it would be, I think you could get 10,000 agents in a room and have someone say, here's our huge plan we're going to blow up Disneyland and we're going to make it look like, right? Something out of a movie. And then all 10,000 agents would be like, yes.
Yeah,
exactly. There's just no, like having been in the organization, everyone would scatter from there and immediately like be making memos and calling friends and attorneys, and no one's going to stand for, and you join the job because you really love justice.
Yes.
And despise corruption. So what I see on TV kind of makes me sad, but I think we also propagate it through movies. And the media. Yeah.
And then the news cycle that needs to have everything be salacious and sexy and, big.
Yeah.
How much lateral movement freedom does a field office have to just investigate whatever falls in their lap? Or are they out there searching for various crimes? Or is it like, well, whatever happens to happen on Tuesday is what we're doing?
That's a great question. There's a lot of latitude. There's been periods where the director said, these are the priorities for the FBI, and it's going to be these 7 things in order. And then every field office was supposed to imitate that. And there was sometimes where the leadership would say, these are the main things we do. How does that look for Oklahoma? So I was sort of an anomaly. I spent my whole 23 years stationed in Oklahoma, but I traveled the world. I traveled the whole US. But there were times where they said the number one priority in the United States is counterterrorism. So whatever it is your Oklahoma City field office is doing, make sure that you always have some effort in the counterterrorism world. And then sometimes they would say, well, having just had the Oklahoma City bombing in Oklahoma and having runaway meth labs in Oklahoma, what does it look like for you guys? Well, in Oklahoma, counterintelligence and counterespionage might be pretty low. We don't have embassies. We don't have a lot of spycraft. And so they would say, Oklahoma has the flexibility of these main things the FBI does: counterintelligence, counterterrorism, cyber, violent crime, white collar crime, corruption. Oklahoma might say, in our state, terrorism, because the Murrah bombing got blown up. And so that matters to us. And it's also going to be partly violent crime, drugs, because we have a serious meth problem. And even though counterespionage is like second nationwide, in Oklahoma, maybe not. So we had a lot of latitude.
Where were you from originally?
I'm from Oklahoma originally.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. I grew up in Oklahoma, and they have a you can't go home rule. So when you go to Quantico, they tell you, like, we're going to send you somewhere other than home. There's theories as to why that is. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a real thing. But
what do you think? What do you think's their theory in terms of like trying to join the bureau to help your buddy who has a corruption sting, thing in his, that would be the only thing that pops out.
That's one of the theories, is that it's an old school mafia mob tripwire. That if you have someone can get into the bureau for the mafia out of New York, and you put that dude in Grand Forks, North Dakota, it doesn't matter what his ties used to be. He's starting fresh. New community, new family, new church, new boss, new everything. Some of it, I wonder if it's just not like a maturing. And Director Mueller really seemed to have he was very insistent that everyone transfer, that everyone live in multiple offices in their careers, and that everybody had been to at least one major metropolitan office. And he never gave a justification for it. He's just like, the Bureau will be better for it. We're like, all right, you realize that we're all trained to find facts. Can you give us some facts behind it? And he just, so I grew up in Oklahoma, and then I lived in 4 or 5 different states when I was in the Air Force, and I applied for the Bureau when I was stationed in Florida. And I happened to have been born in Florida before my folks split up when I was 2. So they didn't care that I grew up in Oklahoma. They cared that I was born in Florida. I had family in Florida, and I applied out of Florida. So they said, you can't go back to Florida. And Oklahoma has a really short waiting list. So, and then I got here and just never left.
So then once you get in, you spend a couple years before getting involved in, SWAT and the sniper program and whatnot. What was that transition like? And what was it like to, obviously it would appear, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you didn't really have a lot of, quote unquote, tactical experience, maybe coming from doing investigations. And now you're going to be like boots on the ground, war fighting, right? Domestic war fighting, basically.
Yeah.
What was that like, and how did you get into it?
I found out about the FBI SWAT program when I was still in OSI. I was working a joint case with the FBI office down the road from us. And one of the guys was he was a former Green Beret and was on the SWAT team. And I was immediately intrigued because we carried guns in OSI and we had armor and shield, but we didn't do anything that was like tier 1 tactical work because, under my suit, I was a captain in the Air Force. I wasn't like, we just don't need to arrest someone on base. you don't really need, you just call them to the boss's office and arrest them. We really never did. We just like report to your commander's office and then surprise, you're under arrest. And this guy started telling me, his name was Patarini. He started telling me about their SWAT program. And I was like, oh, this is no joke tactical unit. Like these guys are for real. And so that was part of why I wanted to get in the FBI, is I wanted to have access to at least try out for a tactical unit like that. And then I so happened to get stationed in a little office where my training agent and my partner was on the SWAT team. So, 4 or 5 days a month, he was putting on his uniform and going out and doing ops and doing training. And so I was constantly interrogating him. What'd you guys do? How'd you breach the door? Who'd you arrest? How did it go? And so the Bureau had a policy, you need to be a street agent for about a year and a half before you do anything else. So I waited my time and tried out. And they take, a lot of the guys on the team, you're asking about me not having a lot of tactical experience. Mm-hmm. There are definitely, there's guys on the team that are SEALs and Green Berets. I knew one dude that was Delta, combat controllers. There's a lot of dudes that and especially in this era, they had been in combat. And, but we had, one of the team leaders and one of our lead breachers was a businessman. And so they just kind of start everyone from ground zero. And some of the guys, they had to unlearn the way SEALs do things. And then the Marine had to unlearn the way Marines do things because the FBI does it this one way. And so some of the guys that even said, some guys that don't have any experience, but are quick learners, that are blank slate, are actually easier to train as operators. Cause I wasn't going, well, when I was in the Rangers, we did it this way. And they're like, dude, no one cares.
Yeah.
You used to be a Ranger. He used to be a SEAL. No one cares.
So what does that training look like then? Once you maybe apply or whatever that process looks like, now you've been accepted. Now they're going to train you how to do this task. What does that look like?
There's a lot to it. So there's the selection process for your team. So if you were in Oklahoma, you go through the selection process for that team, a couple of days to try out, some interviews, fitness tests, that kind of stuff, and shooting. And then if you get selected for the team, at some point you're going to have to go back to Quantico to the schoolhouse, and you're going to need to go through 3 weeks of new operator training, which includes WMD training. It used to be 2 weeks of just new operator training, and then about a week of WMD, how to fight in a Suburni environment. And now they've smashed all that together into 3 weeks. And then even then, either before or after that school, you might go through a new operator training school, NOTS. And we might put our guys through a NOTS where a couple days a month they're doing field craft, they're doing searches, they're doing rescue, whatever. So it's a long process. There are guys that it took them a couple years to get on the team, and then once on the team, it took them a couple years to get certified.
Okay.
So it takes a while. So
eventually you get a stamp of approval that now you can go on missions.
You do. Literally the team patch, which is what I put on my book. Shameless plug.
Beautiful.
The color patch, we our mobility team wears that patch. Our organic medics will wear that patch, that kind of stuff. But the green hued patch that's in all green subdued colors, that's for operators only. And so that is sort of when you graduate from new operator training and your team accepts you, you get to wear the green patch.
Cool.
And so we don't trade those. Those are that's something they gave you one.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. If you lost your patch, you lost your patch. That was your big sign of you're officially a certified operator.
What was that moment like? Was it pretty exciting to finally, step into that role?
Well, I have to admit that when I came into the program, I came in pre 9/11. And so it was a very different program. All tactical units were very different back then. If you talk to guys that were old school, Green Beret, DevGru guys, back prior to 9/11, we were all totally different animals. Probably a lot of it was funding and a lot of it was just mission set. But when I went in, it was the black combat boots, black BDUs, black armor, big old helmets. and MP5s. And so we didn't really get very many slots to knots because they weren't doing a lot of them. There wasn't a lot of funding for the program. So they would let you field certify just to get you in the door. So it took me about a year I'd have to go to my team leader and say, well, I have to do a confined space or rappelling. I need to do a medical triage, CQB, hostage rescue. That just had this list of all the tasks that you had to be signed off on. And it was up to me to chase down my team leader and say, can we please train on this? Because I need this signed off. And when finally all those were done, they still hadn't got me a slot. He sent that off to headquarters, and headquarters approved me as an operator. So it was super anticlimactic for me.
Yeah. That's kind of a bummer after all the work to just have the anticlimactic finish.
Yeah. I just got this letter that's like, you're a certified operator now as of this date. And then I just had like that piece of paper.
And your patch, did that come in the letter too?
Yeah, and back then the patch the patch on the book didn't exist. We used a different patch back then. And back then we also didn't hold it. We didn't withhold it. So as soon as I got on the team, they gave me a patch back then. That's sort of a new tradition, is that you've got to earn your green patch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then once you're in that team, how do your job roles and duties change? Are you still doing field work and then you're also getting called out on SWAT deployments, or are you mostly training, or what does it look like? It
is both. There's a heavy emphasis on SWAT operators are first and foremost skilled special agents and detectives. And we've removed guys from the team because they were putting too much effort on the team and not enough to get their cases solved. And I'm a strong proponent of, I've heard guys say, the SWAT program would go to another level if we could pull all these agents out of their investigative duties and make them full-time tacticians. And that may be true, but I think you lose the special mojo that FBI SWAT brings to the tactical community, and that we have 1,000 college-educated, highly motivated, highly trained operators that also spend their days solving crimes. So when we go to do a search warrant, everyone's still thinking like a detective. It wouldn't be uncommon for someone to say, hey, can I get a copy of the warrant? I want to read it before we execute this. Hey, can I see your probable cause affidavit? When did the judge actually sign it? What's the smallest thing we can look for? What would be outside the scope of this search warrant? Who can we arrest under what circumstances? Who can we detain? So you just kind of have these guys that are still thinking very much like, what if I end up in the courtroom tomorrow testifying to what we did, because we're all cops doing high risk work. But so when I first got in, it was a day or two a month, pre 9/11. And sometimes you had to miss training because you had a bank robbery or a kidnapped kid or something. And then it was just an upward climbing scale throughout my career. And by the end of my career, I was a team leader. I was a sniper team leader. I was lead medic. And so I had a day a month. All I did was clinicals for my EMT. I had a day a month that all I did was teach or conduct sniper training, 4 days a month, where all I did was teach, train, or be trained, combative, CQB, that kind of stuff. And then maybe 2, 3, 4 days a month where I was planning and executing warrants all across the US and overseas. So I was still a street agent about half the time. About 2 weeks a month, I was still a street agent. And it was way harder because the supervisors don't cut you a break. There's no like, well, you're an operator. You were 5 states away yesterday conducting a high risk warrant. It's just like, that's part of being on the team, is you're going to have to work a lot of late nights to keep your cases up.
So you're flying around the country, I presume, are you flying commercially, or do they have some sort of setup, or how the hell are you getting around with, I would imagine if you're going around this much, you're flying quite a lot.
Well, there was one occasion where they leased us a big jumbo jet, a Airbus, for an overseas op. And sometimes we would fly mil air here and there, but most of the time we had so much crap to take with us that we drove.
Wow.
And then later in my career, when we started getting armored vehicles that were organic to the team, you had to bring your armor. So it was not only did we drive, but we probably would launch the convoy of armored vehicles a day ahead.
Oh my goodness.
They can only go like 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And prior to that, you'd go to a big operation, there'd be like 15 teams and they'd have 15 pieces of armor waiting for you. when we started bringing our own armor, and then a standard rollout would look like probably 2 operators in a Suburban, and then the whole rest of it. Like mine, I had my whole medical suite, my sniper gear, my armor, food, sleeping bag, commo, downlinks for the helicopter, like so much gear.
Yeah.
That it kind of it would be harder to try to load all that up and ship it than to just jam it all in a truck and drive.
Mm-hmm. So as you're traveling the country, you're linking up with other field office SWAT teams, or
Yep.
so that it becomes 3 field offices worth of team, or how does that work?
Yeah. And that was something that we got a lot better at throughout my career. Early in my career, we were the Oklahoma City team, and sort of our Kansas City team and our Dallas team were sort of our sister teams that we'd train with on occasion, and we'd support each other during crises or big ops. And then later in my career, this paradigm changed from there being 56 SWAT teams and 56 offices to 1,000-man SWAT team that is stationed all over the place. And that's one of the reasons we went to the unified patch, and we went to a standard training protocol back at Quantico. And I thought it was great. There was some resistance, but I was a big fan of it. So once we started normalizing what we call center lane tactics, this is the way you should probably clear a house. This is probably the way you should operate your radios. And when you go back to Newark or you go back to LA and you guys want to do it differently, fine. But when we do big joint ops, everyone does their center lane tactics, same commo, same crypto, same tactics, same weapons. And then we started doing ops where we would bring in 400 or 500 operators, and we bring in 15, 20 teams. In the book, there's a case called Delta Blues. It's a great example where they pulled in dozens of teams, hundreds of operators, and we executed, can't remember, 80 something arrests in one night simultaneously.
Wow.
And you couldn't do that if it was 56 teams meeting each other for the first time and learning how you do it. It had to be this one big team that all has the same protocols. And that's really that's the way the Bureau operates the team now.
So when you talk about watching these shows, and sometimes they're hard to watch because they're so inaccurate to the truth, what do you see frequently them getting wrong that would be maybe easy for them to get right, or what is just flagrantly wrong that they're not even close to getting right?
So many things. Oh man. The first one right off the bat is, now I hope you see this all the time, is that they're like a street agent in plain clothes or maybe a raid jacket with a pistol at the front of the stack with like 15 decked out operators.
I've always thought that.
And they're bossing the operators, and they're like, I need 2x2 cover man, cover 6 o'clock, and I need blue team to start. And you're like,
yeah,
you wouldn't be within 8 blocks of a tactical operation like that. But I love story writing, and it's part of why I think I wanted to write a book. Like if you cut the main character off from the tactical part of the story, so I get why they do it, but it makes me crazy because they'll have like the least amount of armor, the least amount of training,
front of the line,
and then you can kind of kill off all the idiot red shirts, right? Like the SWAT guys are just like the red shirts from Star Trek.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Kill off. They were like, blue team's down. Whereas in real life, everyone would be crying like, oh my God, blue team's dead.
Yeah,
and they're just like, blue team's down, bring in green team. So I get the story writing, but that drives me crazy. It drives me crazy when the FBI guy shows up and just takes charge.
Yeah.
I've never, ever in my whole career just shown up and been like, we're in charge now, everybody screw off.
Have you ever done the cool badge flip?
That doesn't work at all, man.
I will say this. So I teach hazmat all over. And last year I taught our local field offices hazmat tech class for their field officers. And one of the people there had their badge. And I was like, this is a childhood dream of mine. Can I please do the badge flip? And they let me do it. And it's pretty funny. But yeah, so that's not a real thing. You don't walk in and say, FBI, flip the badge, and now you're in charge and everyone bows to you as you know.
I showed up at a plane crash really shortly after 9/11, and it was a fatality plane crash. And I was the first FBI agent on the scene, but obviously like airport authorities were there, the local police were there. They had cordoned off the crash. And so I went up respectfully to the yellow tape and got my credentials out and like waved over an officer and said, hey man, I'm local FBI And he was like, you can wait outside. And I was like, no, I need to see this crime scene because we need to know right off the bat if this is terrorist related or not. And he's like, sorry, the boss said no one comes or goes. And I remember trying to get him to, and he kind of was examining my badge. The flip wouldn't work. He's examining it like, you don't look like you could be an FBI agent. Like, yeah, I guess you are. And he's like, dude, I don't care. No one comes in. And I ended up waving down the chief of police because I'm friends with the chief of police. And I was like, hey. And he's like, oh, hey, let him in. But I had to like get the chief's attention because this officer he didn't give a crap that I was the senior FBI agent on scene.
Do you think that the local law enforcement relishes in the small amount of power that they get to have in that moment to say no FBI? I'll speak from experience that in the very infrequent times that I get to tell the police what to do as a firefighter, I do enjoy it a lot, probably more than I should, because it doesn't happen very often. But that power dynamic shift is pretty tasty sometimes. But I could imagine that a local, quote unquote beat cop could enjoy telling the FBI to pound sand. Unfortunately, I wish it'd be more, do you find competitiveness between local agency and the FBI, or is there resistance to work together, or are they excited to kind of be involved with a case on a grander scale?
I have definitely seen the whole spectrum. I ended my career here in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and here was just this amazing law enforcement community. Like long before I got here, the sheriff's department, the police department, the state police, everyone just already gets along. Everyone's already cooperative. So when I showed up, it was almost like, are you willing to be part of this collective effort to be a peace officer for our state? And then it was like, welcome, glad to have your skill set. So, but I've been stationed in other places where it was very adversarial, but it was already adversarial. One of the other places, and I won't name it, where I was stationed, you would never have the chief of police and the high sheriff in the same office at the same time, unless you had already told one of them you're in command and he's not. Or someone would get up and leave. So there was already a weird tension in that whole community. But usually when I showed up, if I showed up to a crisis site and I found the chief or the sheriff, I'd say, what can I do to help? Right off the bat, first words out of my mouth. And they already know me. We've had coffee, we pal around. It's not like in the movies, they're all meeting for the first time. They're like, Agent Johnson, who's this Phoebe? And so he's like, hey, Jeremy, this plane crashed. And I'm like, yeah, I saw him, man. What can I do to help? Mm-hmm. So they're usually like, great, can you run this guy's name in like a database? Yeah, I'll do that right now, man. What else can I do for you? Well, can you do this? Yeah. And they're like, great. Hey, will you bring that to me when you come? So I'm like, I'm free help. Yeah. And then there's times where it was, I worked in embezzlement. I worked a multi-million-dollar embezzlement case where a really small police department was working it. And they were like, I was like, we need to send out 40 subpoenas. We need to have, we need to go to grand jury. We need to start a search warrant. We need to start seizure, forfeiture ops. We need to talk to the U.S. attorney. And the guy was like, can you please be in charge? I don't know how to do any of this, man. And I'm like, no, if you're not offended, I'll take charge. I'm happy to take charge, and we'll go meet your chief and talk to them. So like, I either showed up and I was like, I'm super helpful, let me help you, or they would ask me to take charge. So I just never saw that friction, unless that friction already existed in the law enforcement community in that town.
Mm-hmm. What does your access to information look like in juxtaposed to local law enforcement? Like in terms of like, run this guy's name, figure out some information. Do you have access to databases that are just way beyond what they do?
I think the short answer is yes. So the FBI database, the way it's set up is it keeps track of everybody's name that's interviewed every time, everywhere. So if you put Jeremy Redman in our database, it would pull up me as an applicant. It would pull up me as a military officer, my reports that I've written for the Bureau. Man, my name pops up. There's a list of all the time. So no one has access to all the times the FBI has interviewed everyone except the FBI. Mm-hmm. And then we have a really tight liaison with the CIA because of surprisingly, the FBI is the chief counterintelligence agency for the United States. And so we work hand in hand with the CIA, but stateside, we're the supreme counterintelligence agency, and CIA is subordinate to us. Overseas, that role reverses. Overseas, the CIA is the chief counterintelligence agency, and we support. Inside the U.S., cops are in charge and spies have to fall in second place.
Do you think
Overseas,
that
spies are in
actually
charge.
happens? Do you think
Oh,
that
100%.
okay.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
like that's go back to the conspiracy world,
Yeah.
like this whole like rogue nation of the CIA. You don't put much weight to that.
No, not at all. Because, well, for one, I almost always had a great relationship with the CIA. Sometimes we would have personality disconnects because we're so black and white, what's right and what's wrong in the Bureau and the CIA. I mean, if you think about it, part of their mission set is to go to another country and steal their stuff, you know? So they think in the gray, like, how could we get away with this technically? And I'm like, no, not technically. The spirit and intent of the law is what it is, and we follow it. But stateside, I'd have like sometimes a really eager CIA officer say, hey, listen, I don't want to bother you. I want to interview this person. It's because of this case we're working. It's an overseas case, but this person is here in Oklahoma. I want to run out and do an interview. And I would say, yeah, I'm sort of passive aggressive, like, yeah, I'll go with you. When do you want to go? I know I don't want to bother you. I want to, and they know they have to get my permission.
Okay.
So they're like, hey, it's cool. I got it. Like, I'll let you know how the interview goes. And I would be like, negative. Once in a while, I was like, hey, just to let you know, if you conduct that interview without me, it will be in violation of federal law. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I know you just came home from like 4 years in Botswana. But here the law is paramount, and I will 100% report this if you don't go through me for everything you do. So the CIA doesn't like it, but it all makes sense. You know, we're training them to be rule breakers, and they come back to the U.S. and the big dumb FBI is telling them what they can and can't do. Yeah. But there's no easy way around it. Like, they have to ask our permission to do stuff stateside.
So I would be remiss if we didn't get a little bit into some of your experience actually running on some of these, you know, high risk missions, right? So, you know, I can't even imagine, I can't fathom you even have a number in head of how many you did, but what are some of the lessons learned in terms of, you know, preparing and executing these missions to success?
Man, I think one of the reasons we were really successful is because the repetitions we put in rehearsal and the amount of time we put into preparation before an op. We always had there's no easy mission, there's no routine mission. And so if it was a terrorist or a house full of ricin toxin or something crazy, we obviously, right, we're pulling out all the stops. Everything stops because this is a big national level operation. But then sometimes when we just got a bunch of drug dealers we needed to round up, or child pornographers or something like that, we put the same effort into it. Where's this house located? Where are their cameras? How often do they come and go from the house? Let's start surveilling them. What time do they usually go to bed at night? Let's get the blueprints for the house. Let's look at the structure. Well, there's a vent for the bathroom. So the bathroom's in the back right corner. How could we turn their power off? How can we would go over and over and over. And then a lot of times once we get the blueprint, we'd go in the garage, empty all the cars out, and we'd tape off the blueprint of the house. And then we'd start running rehearsals through. The front room is this big, front room connected to the kitchen. Kitchen has a back door that goes to the back, you know. So we would put hundreds and hundreds of hours into a rep that sometimes we'd get there and the bank robbers or the kidnappers or whoever would just immediately show up and be like, no, thank you. And we put all in, but you never let that change your, like, man, people just give up when we show up. Maybe we don't need to spend all this time prepping. And that's what would bite you, I think, is to say, dude, how many bank robbery or drug reps, like if you've done one, you've done a million of them. And I think the day you stop acting like this one is the one that you might lose an operator on is the day that you do lose an operator. So that amount of training, and I'm grateful that the Bureau gave us that sort of leeway that we could go to the leadership and say, hey, we need 3 straight days to prepare for an op that will probably take 30 minutes.
When you think about like your career, are there any specific missions that come out into you as ones that you learned a lot from in terms of like staying power with things that happened that you took away?
Man, so many. I have to try to figure out how to narrow that down in my head. Staying power, like, you're talking about resilience and
Yeah, or in terms of like, man, like if I think back in my career, I go, this call, this call, this call. That's a thing that I definitively learned something from that I will never forget, that I've brought with me ever since, right? What are those moments for you?
well, I mean, early on, I mean, honestly, my whole career, it was the stupid mistakes that people didn't realize I made. That you just kind of quietly, I talked to a MARSOC operator a while back that he talked about when he was new to MARSOC. He loaded his rifle wrong, and he actually did a patrol with his rifle with like a double feed jam because he didn't want anybody in his fire team to know that he jacked his gun up when he loaded it.
Oh no!
And that's it. But I was thinking, like, first of all, you shouldn't tell that story because you're going to ruin the facade that like everyone is perfect in the special operations community. But like, that's such a real thing. I remember in the first chapter in my book is about my second op I ever did. And I talk about how like I looked right at the flashbang when it went off. And then I trained with hundreds of flashbangs, but I think I wanted so badly to be looking through the front door to where the bad guy was that I couldn't break my eyes for a second. And so I had that big purple green blob burned in my eyes for the rest of the clearing. Or like the same thing, before we had active ear pro, I remember thinking, man, I'm going to take my earplug out of one ear. And we just had a combo in one ear. We didn't have the whole headset rig like we have these days. And I remember taking the earplug out and thinking, I just need to hear everything. Like I need all of my senses. This is a real op. I'm okay with losing a little hearing. And I took my ear pro out, and then we went to the breach and they threw that flashbang and I couldn't hear crap for the next 5-6 minutes, So I remember thinking, okay, you idiot, remember not to look at the flashbang. Remember to leave your ear pro in. Early in my career, it was those little things that I hope no one was catching. Like I'll never do that again because I did it wrong and I'm ashamed of making that mistake. But then I never made that mistake again.
What was the culture like in terms of post-incident debriefing and not in terms of mental health, but in terms of learning from ops to make it better the next time? Was it open and honest about I made this mistake, I didn't, or was it kind of closed off for the sake of padding egos?
It was open and honest, and the longer I was on the team, the more honest and open it got. I felt like part of that was we just had really good leaders, and the culture was more and more like, you can tell me what I did wrong as long as you're respectful about it. But we called it an AAR or a hot wash. And we got to where we prioritized it. We had a long mission where you get up at 2 a.m, we're hot, we're sweaty, we're tired. You got all the adrenaline dump that makes you just want to sleep. And we just have to say, hey, listen, we're all going to go get food and we're all going to go get changed and we're going to get showered. But before we do, we'd form our standard SWAT circle and we would go around one at a time and you could say anything while you're in that. So we would be like by the Bearcat, soaked in sweat, and everybody would like, this is so important that we get this AAR out right now while it's fresh in our head, that we're willing to wait on the comfort that we all so much want, and go around and guys could say, hey, I thought that was an excellent breach. I mean, that was a double barricaded solid steel door with solid hinges and a steel frame. And the breachers got through it in under 60 seconds, man, kudos to you. Also, I felt like this didn't go quite so well. Felt like maybe we were compromised on our approach. Maybe we should have gone in from the back door. And our team leader he'd have a notepad and he just would be constantly writing how to do it better. Once everybody learned to put the egos away, I feel like we got way better as a team.
What did, in terms of the actual sniper component of the your time with the teams, what did that look like in terms of, I fortunately, I've made friends since with, and he's been on the podcast, a guy that actually taught the hostage rescue team sniper program in Quantico. And so that dude's awesome. He's like the coolest dude ever. And
what's the name again?
Dagan Van Oosten is his name.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a Marine Scout sniper team leader, and then he eventually worked for the CIA, and he's awesome. But yeah, so what? Obviously, it's probably not as conducive to just like step out on a Tuesday and do sniper training, right? You must have a different pipeline to get into that specific wing of the SWAT program.
Right. There is you have to, I tell people this a lot. You got to get into the Bureau, become an agent. You have to be an agent to become an operator, and then you have to be an operator to become a sniper. Mm-hmm. So surprisingly, sometimes I have young people say, hey, how can I also be an FBI sniper? And then I explain to them, they got to go to college and then get a job and then be recruited out of that job into the Bureau in their 30s to become an agent, to become an operator. But they're like, no, I want to do that right now. I'm like, bro, it's not like the movies. Mm-hmm. It is a lot of our senior operators are in their 40s. But anyway, there's a school you have to go to, a schoolhouse, to get signed off on being a sniper. But it's almost like it's only 2 weeks, and it's very much like you're already a skilled operator, skilled marksman. I already had the rifle and I trained with it. I already knew the qual. So the school is really like them making sure that you have already checked all the boxes that you should check to be a baseline sniper. And then I felt like most guys came back. When I was team leader, I would even remind them, now that you're back from sniper basic and you're a certified sniper, all that means is that you have a license to learn. Mm-hmm. It means you can legally and lawfully use that rifle in a crisis situation. It does not mean you're anywhere near an expert sniper. There's advanced schools to go to. There's private schools to go to. There's reps and reps and reps on the range. And when I became a sniper team leader, I insisted that we have 1 day a month separate from all ops, except from all other training, that was just snipers training, and usually just 4 or 5 of us. And all we did that day was worked on rifle craft, field craft, communication, night vision, that kind of stuff.
What weapons platform are you using? What, cartridge and, yeah? We
primarily use the 308 Winchester, the 7.62 by 5.1 NATO. We have 6.5 Creedmoors in the inventory now. We've messed around with other cartridges. There's been a lot of testing with like the 6 ARC back east. But man, the thing about the 308 is you can go 10,000 rounds on a barrel. Mm-hmm. It has a really good like powder to bore diameter ratio. Basically, it doesn't foul very quickly. So if you can't clean it, it's probably not going to jam. A lot of the Gucci rounds, like I'm a big fan of the 6 Creedmoor now that I just shoot for fun and competition. But man, that thing's got to be clean. It's kind of fickle, and it'll burn a barrel out in 1,000 rounds. Every 1,000 rounds, I'm throwing barrels away. So, I could go to a school and burn a barrel out before the school's over. So, and those Gucci cartridges are great for shooting for 1,000, but bottom line, police officers really don't need to shoot past 200-300 yards. It would be the craziest day. I've actually been in engagement over 200 yards, and that was a huge anomaly to actually have to make a lethal shot at that range. But we train out to 1,000 just to be capable, but you need a rifle that shoots really well out to 200 or 300 yards, is really reliable. The ammo is relatively cheap. It does a good job of stopping the threats. So, and you can tell I'm used to defending the 308. That's why I'm saying all this right now. But a lot of guys are like, what are you talking? There's a Creedmoor and there's the ARC and there's the this. And I'm like, yeah, dude. And I love those. Heck, I own those. I teach classes with those. Mm-hmm. But for police work, it's stupid reliable and it's effective.
Mm-hmm. What's it look like? In the past, when I've talked to people, it's been in the military context in terms of like tactical engagement and threat deterrence or whatever you want to call it. What do the rules of engagement look like in terms of stateside, threat deterrence? Like how you're looking down the barrel of your gun at the quote unquote bad guy. What is the lenience to make the decision? What does it look like in terms of, actually pulling the trigger?
That's a great question. And that we have a very specific lethal force policy. It's been relatively the same my entire career for a long time. And every agent has it roughly memorized, but it's an agent can use lethal force only when necessary. That is when the agent has probable cause to believe that the subject of said force poses an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm to himself or others. So it boils down to imminent, which means probably going to happen. It doesn't mean immediate. It could be someone reaching, pulling up their shirt and pulling something out of their waistband is imminent. Probable cause is a reasonable belief. Like, would a reasonable person think, there was a case where we chased a bank robber until he was exhausted and he stopped behind a car, and he did just that. Got behind a car, did a 180, looked right back at us, pulled his shirt up and reached into his waistband. And a guy shot him right in the neck right at that instant. Turned out he had a gun. But so that was one of those things where the Bureau's lethal force policy, please don't make a snippet out of this where it sounds out of context.
I won't.
The Bureau's lethal force policy is very liberal in that they caveat it with only when necessary. So if you can justify what you did afterwards, you're fine. And we're hiring people that are really bright, really driven, and are very much rule followers. So they gave us a lethal force policy that's actually broader than most of us will use. I know for me personally, I can think of a dozen instances off the top of my head where I was in like what someone would call a shoot situation, and I refrained from shooting. I mean, I had one where we did a drug raid and the guy was hiding under the blankets. I don't know why. And as we cleared the room and we started to pull the blankets off the bed, this guy comes jumping out of the bed screaming, man, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. And then made this big furtive reach behind his waistband. And I was carrying his shield, so that was part of it. I had my shield up, and I remember thinking, man, what if he shoots me in the thigh and I bleed to death? What if he doesn't shoot the shield? What if he shoots my teammate right here in the neck? And had to slack out of the trigger and was like, by the textbook, this should be a lethal engagement. And just had some thin slicing. And it turns out he really needed to itch his butt crack. I don't know why, with the team of SWAT guys in his house. And I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Show me your hand. And he was like, man, my butt itches. I was like, oh my God. But it would, if that was on camera, that could have been justifiable. But so to narrow it down, like to answer your question, I like that the policy is broad enough that I always have the option to protect my own life. And I always have the option to protect innocent people. And then it's up to me to throttle back. And I think the evidence of that policy being so good is that you get very, very few FBI shootings and almost none that are ever questioned. It's not because they're thoroughly reviewed, because the FBI looks into them, and then DOJ will look into them, the Inspector General will look into them, the state prosecutor will look into them, the local police will look. Everyone wants to scrutinize the FBI shooting. But we got such good training and we had such a good protocol that when an agent actually shot, almost everyone was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness you did. You saved someone's life. So it was never a concern of like, are they going to back me? I felt like we always had the backing, and I don't want to shoot anybody. So I just need to know that if I do, the system will say, hey, you did what you had to do. Sorry, you had to do that.
In coming back to what you kind of mentioned earlier as being a Christian, a man of faith, like how has that guided your, career and like the times you have had to have engagements and, the fallout of those afterwards? How has your, spiritual life impacted that?
I love people. I know that's a weird sentence, but I've met criminals that I like we've had fun conversations. Like in the back of a patrol car, they've made me laugh. And like they're still going to jail, but I've rarely felt myself hating someone. I've felt just an abhorrent disdain for what people have done to other people. But also because I love people, because I see what's happened to the victim. And it's so upsetting to me that I have a disdain for the person that is the criminal and then still really value their life. Like as a Christian, they're a child of the one true King. So their life is precious. And the only reason that it makes sense to take a life really is to save a life. So I've been in those situations and honestly, I've wept over them.
Mhm.
But it wasn't because I regretted what I did. It's because just the ugliness of the like broken world. Like
Mhm.
the world is so simultaneously very beautiful and full of joy and brokenness. So I'm not saying like the world is crap,
Mhm.
but there's moments where there's just, and you've probably seen it as a firefighter, like working a wreck where you're just like, how did this person end up mangled into a wad of steel? It's awful, but also
Mhm.
like cars are a super cool invention. Like,
Yeah.
so I feel like that what's guided me as a Christian is I've never really felt the hatred for anyone. So whether we were protecting someone or arresting someone, or even if we were in a gunfight, I never thought, man, I hate this guy. I just thought, I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect the innocent, protect my teammates. Um, so I never had a guilt for a lawful shooting.
Mhm.
But there's still a sadness of like, it sucks that someone died. Like it sucks. Even when a horrible person dies, it's kind of sucks.
Yeah, and I'm sure through all the work in discovering, investigating crimes, you've had to deal with some really difficult subject matters, whether it be human trafficking or child exploitation or whatever it be.
Mhm.
How do you maintain a worldview that isn't um, tainted to the world when you see the darkest parts of it?
I keep myself grounded, I think, in my faith and in my family. And man, in a big way, my old teammates. I could go out and see, I could describe a case or a crime scene for you right now, literally, legally, and non-graphically, and you would be angry at me. And your viewers would turn the show off. And I'm not like, I wouldn't tell like a nasty story. Like if I just described to you a crime scene I've seen and what happened, you would be like, how dare you talk about that? But I could always come home to a really happy family that loved me and recharged my batteries. And my church was always there for me and recharged my batteries. And my team, in a different but wonderful way, the team, is nothing, no substitute for a wife or a church or a daughter. But I could tell them the really grisly thoughts and be really transparent. Like there's things I could tell the team because they were there and they saw that same thing. And you could tell them like, I'm disgusted and I'm furious. And they're like, yeah, bro, me too. Right. Like, and we were there for it and we fixed whatever we could fix. And I feel like between like a really great team and a really great family and church, I could leave that stuff behind when I left the office and almost live a separate life. When I came home, I could kind of wall that stuff off.
So I would imagine inside of your world, the same way as inside of my world in firefighting, marriage is hard, and raising children is hard. What's your kind of retrospective advice if you could talk to yourself earlier in your life about how to do it better or more effective, or what was effective about it?
Man, I have to think about that for a second. I mean, there were hard days. You're right. Like it's hard to have a job as a first responder and also be like a doting, happy, carefree husband. Something I didn't do early in my career that I think I should have started doing earlier was that when I would get home and park in the driveway and get my mind right before I got out of the car. And especially early in marriage, I felt like I should just jump out of the car and run into the house and then just dump everything on my wife and she would be my safe place. And that wasn't always fair to her. Like I wasn't going to not tell her about my life, but I couldn't tell her everything. That's not fair to her. But sometimes just getting out, like what happened and how I feel about it, I can change. So I can be disgusted and upset about something and sit in my car for a minute and pray and just breathe deep and realize that same thing happened, but I'm not disgusted right now. I'm not angry right now and I'm not sad right now. If anything, I'm super happy that I got home. And when I walk in the door, my little girl is going to scream like she's never seen me before and throw herself into my arms. And all I need to do is be dad right now. So I wish I'd done that earlier. I wish from day one, I would sit in my car and get my mind right. And then when I open the door, every time I open the door, start with over the top, Daddy's home. I'm so happy to see everyone. And kind of get out of my own head. It took me a long time. It took me a really long time to even get close to doing that right.
So as you get towards, obviously you're retired now. As you get towards the end of this, storied, insane, unbelievable experience that is your career, what was it like to make the decision to walk away?
Man, that was really tough. That was super tough. Later in my career, I've always been like a weird long-term planner. I've always thought ahead. I have a spreadsheet of like the things I'll do in the next 20 years, and I always have. I don't know why, but I've always just thought way, way ahead. What am I going to do 10 years from now, 15 years from now? So there was a point probably 10 years before I was eligible to retire where I thought, okay, I'm eligible to retire in 10 years. And the way the Bureau is structured is you can retire at age 50 if you have more than 20 years in, and then they kick you out at 57. So I already had my 20 in, so I knew I could leave at 50 or they'd kick me out at 57. And 7 years seems like a big window, unless like I already been in the military and law enforcement 32 years. But having had a 32-year career, that 7-year window is going to go by super fast. And the decision that I made that I stuck with was I had such a bond with my teammates and I enjoyed the SWAT program so much that I decided when it was time to leave the team, I was going to completely resign. So a day would come where I would turn in my badge and my gun and my helmet and my armor and my sniper rifle, and it was a one clean walk away. And I don't think that's the right answer for everyone, but it was for me, because at 50, I could barely pass the fitness test. There's one fitness for all agents. There's age factors. As you get older, the standards change. SWAT, as it should be, there's no male, female standard. There's no age standard. There's one standard to be an operator. You either pass it or you don't. And as I got 50, I had aches and pains and my back started to get messed up. And I thought, I want to leave before guys are asking me why I'm still on the team. And I want to leave where I want to leave when guys are like, please don't go. Because I've seen it where guys left and I thought, please don't go. We need you. And there's guys where I was like, thank God this guy retired. Like we've been kind of looking the other way on standards because this guy just can't leave. And so I did that when I decided that when I was 50, and I gave a 9-month notice to my team, to my boss, to everyone. Said 9 months from now, I am leaving everything. And then when that day actually came, I was just a mess. There was the distinctive moment where I was tearing all my patches off of my armor. So the FBI patches, the SWAT patches, my designator was OC2, which is second in command for the Oklahoma division. And I tore that OC2 patch off and I started to sob out of control, like freak out, ugly. I think my wife thought I was having some sort of crazy breakdown. And I was like, why am I crying so hard? Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Mm-hmm. But it like all came out at once. And I called my old team leader who'd retired a couple years prior. And it was like, I'm freaking out. What's wrong with me? And he's like, dude, I did the same thing. Mm-hmm. And my old team leader who just retired a few months ago, I was telling him about it. And he goes, man, my last op, when I took my helmet off, I just erupted in tears. There was something about the helmet. So like there are these points where I just like, I miss this chapter so much in my life, but I've known all along I'm renting my space on the team. I don't own it. Mm-hmm. And the day I got off the team, I opened up the assaulter team leader position, the lead medic position, the lead sniper position. Like they could have tryouts, and the next tryouts, a guy could slip onto the team as a new operator. The other guys could bump up and take my role. It's like, how dare I hold that for over 21 years? Mm-hmm. I got to do those roles for 21 years. So I don't regret retiring, but and everyone told me like, dude, it's so hard. You don't understand. I'm like, whatever. They're like, you gotta have a career and have your day planned out, or you're gonna spiral. And I'm like, you have no idea. I've got so many hobbies. I've got so many things I want to do. And it's true. Like a few weeks into it, I was like, what am I doing with myself?
Oh.
Where's my, but I would feel the same way if I retired at 50 or 57 or at 75.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think everyone, and that's what I tell my old teammates, you're going to have to go through it. It's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any worse. There's going to come a day you turn it all in and it's going to really, really be emotional. But so just bear in mind your whole career, there's going to be this day where it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And then just embrace the fact that I'm glad that I'm in my early 50s and I can write a book and I can go on adventures and go hiking and I can do a whole new thing. So I don't regret any of it. And yet, like there is a sadness of like, man, I used to do such a cool thing with such great guys and I can't anymore.
What do you miss about it?
The camaraderie, probably almost more than anything. To have a band of friends that, like, I've put pressure on their gunshot wounds, and sorry,
no,
hung Christmas lights for them while they were in Afghanistan. You don't replace that. Sorry, I don't want to be emotional.
It's okay.
You can't replace that, and it's okay. Everyone leaves their tribe at some point, and you just have to find a different tribe.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not kicked out of that tribe. Like, I'm still a part of it. I'm just not in the mix with it. So, yeah, it's more real and raw than I want to imagine. But like it's not like I regret anything. It's just really hard to change such a big chapter.
Yeah.
And it's not my identity at all. Like, I'm a dad and a husband and I'm a follower of Christ, and that is who I am. And my identity is not SWAT operator, but it's what I did for so long, and to be understood so well by a group of guys. And then for our mission set to be do good, make things better. I mean, we put the bad man in jail. We rescue the victim, like put a blanket on the victim, provide medicine to the injured. What a wonderful job. Like, I would do that for free. If someone was like, hey, Jeremy, I know that you're a school teacher, but this little girl got kidnapped and she's down the street and there's no one but you and your best friends. We're going to give all of you body armor and machine guns and night vision, and we're going to have a helicopter overhead. We're going to give you an armored vehicle. We're going to give you all this authority, and now you suddenly have a full EMT training package under your belt and a full medical suite. Will you go kick in the door and rescue that little girl? I would be like, yes, of course. Are you kidding me? I would love to do that. So I got paid to do it. So it's a little bit hard. Everything is a little bit less shiny at first. It's getting like everything is getting bright again. But at first it was like, man, I will never do anything quite like that.
Mm-hmm. How did those thoughts weigh into your decision to write your book?
A lot, dude. Like I said, I'm a weirdo planner and I'm a weirdo notes keeper. You can ask my teammates. I remember everybody's birthdays. I can tell you exactly how many rounds I shot at the range this week. I can tell you exactly what I lifted on bench. And maybe I've been like that before I was a detective. I write everything down all the time. And so I did a lot of journaling while I was on the team. And that first winter after I retired, I decided to just write a little bit, go through my journal and kind of write it so that maybe my grandkids could read it someday. And then people were asking me, they're like, dude, you got interesting stories. You should write a book. And I'm like, no, I don't know how to write a book. But I should polish my journal. And then when I polished up my journal, there's one story a friend of mine told me. He goes, just make one really good. Like, focus on one that you could hand to someone and say, here's a story from my life. So I wrote this short story of a real operation where we pursued a terrorist bomber into sort of the Badlands of Oklahoma, called the Glass Mountains or the Gloss Mountains. and I just wrote a short story, and I sold it for like $3.99, and people just gobbled it up. People were like, I love this. When can we get more of this? So I sat down, I just started writing more of them until I had 250 pages of it and published it. And it's been very cathartic. It's been great too, because like my teammates have called back and said, man, I remember that op. I read your book and I got to that part and I couldn't stop crying. And guys would be like, dude, I got your book and I was reading it in bed and I laughed so loud I woke my wife up in the middle of the night. Like I stayed up till 2 and I woke my wife up laughing so loud, and she's like, go read that book somewhere else. And so to think that like I can bring back those memories to my teammates and then share it with people that have never seen behind the curtain of just the obnoxious crap that you do as a first responder to cope, and the brotherhood that you have and the frustrations along the way. So it was very cathartic for me to write it and have other people read it and tell me what they think about it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm not going to keep you all day. Tell the people where they can find the book, where they can get the book. And thank you, man, for joining me. This has been a very enjoyable conversation. It lived up to every expectation I hoped it would be.
Oh, good. Yeah. Dude, this has been super fun. It's been super fun. I appreciate you. And thanks for letting me plug it. Send me Chronicles of an FBI Sniper. Oh, the camera's backwards. Sorry. Anyway, it's on Amazon.
And we'll link it in the description of the podcast so you can get to it easily. Jeremy, it's been a pleasure. Your career is awesome. And thank you for the work that you've done and the things that you've done to, help out your community and our country.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Of course.